All right, well, let's get started. My name is Ken Archer, and I'm the SVP of Product here at Upwave. And today's expert update is on a topic that is near and dear to the hearts of Upwave users and the team here at Upwave, and that's mid-campaign reporting and optimization made easy. The One of the primary reasons that um, agencies, brands, as well as media companies start using Upwave is because they want faster speed to insights so that they can take action and optimize continuously throughout a campaign. This is an approach to brand advertising that one consultancy recently called performance branding. And performance branding is not possible when you're using a research firm that only provides a post-campaign wrap-up report, maybe one mid-campaign report. Um, it requires the type of platform that was built from the ground up for continuous mid-campaign reporting and optimization. The mid-campaign reporting and optimization is notoriously a complicated activity that is very frustrating. So what we're going to do in this presentation is, first of all, talk about those frustrations. We're familiar with them. We're very well familiar with them. And we're going to talk about where that frustration comes from, and then how to use Upwave to dramatically simplify mid-campaign status reporting to your client and mid-campaign optimization. So this is going to be a great half hour, and you're going to learn a ton in this presentation. So this will be a great use of your time. All right. So mid-campaign reporting and optimization is a struggle for people executing brand campaigns. Agencies spend days, if not weeks, pulling data, preparing for these mid-campaign updates, trying to figure out what they have to show that is insightful for a brand after having spent a considerable amount of money. Even after just a couple weeks, you may have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases for larger campaigns, millions of dollars. And brands expect to have some insights, some reporting, ideally some optimization based on these insights after having spent this much money. It's a completely reasonable expectation. And so why then do those executing on brand campaigns, media, analytics, experts who have years and years of experience in this field struggle to deliver on this demand for mid-campaign reporting and ideally mid-campaign optimization of brand campaigns? The root cause of these struggles is the measurement that historically was available by research consultancies around brand campaigns that relied exclusively on p-values and measures of statistical significance. Now we're going to unpack what that means here next. So if you are listening to this, you have executed on brand campaigns for major brands, and you are very familiar with the following frustrations. How often have you received a report mid-campaign that showed multiple tactics being statistically significant, and you're supposed to decide based on that which tactic to optimize towards? And you don't know. There's multiple tactics that are statistically significant. What does that mean? And should you optimize towards all of them, towards one of them? It doesn't really tell you. How often have you had the experience mid-campaign that you decide to shift budget towards one of those tactics that's statistically significant, only to discover end of campaign, when you get a post-campaign wrap-up, that it's not statistically significant? You have egg on your face. You don't know what to present to the clients, and you don't know how to explain the fact that you just shifted a lot of budget towards a tactic based on what looks like false information. And then how often have you actually had no tactics that are statistically significant mid-campaign, nothing to say to the client, no optimizations to make? And so you go to your analytics team or you're a research partner and say, we have to have something. We've spent so much money. We've run so many impressions. Do we have nothing? And the answer is we have yet to reach thresholds needed for statistical significance. We expect to reach them by the end of the campaign. Well, of course, by the end of the campaign, it's too late to do anything about it. These frustrations are well known to brand marketing executives. And it's these frustrations that Upwave's data science team spent over a year developing these new metrics to dramatically simplify mid-campaign optimization and reporting to make these frustrations go away. The root cause of these frustrations is the exclusive reliance of statistical significance on statistical significance for mid-campaign optimization and reporting. In fact, statistical significance was never intended for mid-flight optimization and reporting. It's meant for end-of-campaign optimization and reporting. In addition, statistical significance does not compare the performance between two tactics. Another reason why it's not meaningful as a mid-campaign insight. It's meaningful post-campaign. Mid-campaign, you want to compare the performance between two tactics. Statistical significance does not do that. Statistical significance compares a tactic to a hypothetical world in which that tactic was not used in a campaign. You cannot draw a conclusion that one tactic outperforms another tactic to a statistically significant degree by looking at a traditional brand lookerable. And worse, when you look at statistical significance reports continuously throughout a campaign, you are dramatically increasing the likelihood of false positives and false negatives. This is what leads to the experience of brand marketers of shifting budget towards tactics that are stat sig mid-campaign, or reporting to a client that a tactic is stat sig, only to then see at the end of the campaign that that's no longer the case. That is what is known as a false positive in statistics. And the more often you look at stat sig, the more false positives you're going to get. So let's look at an example. So this is an example from a CPG campaign where you have three programmatic segments that appear to be driving brand lift. A third-party segment from your DSP, a first-party segment, and a demographic segment targeting millennials. So they are driving their stat sig, but using different thresholds. The highest, the millennial segment it was stat sig at the highest threshold, followed by the first-party segment, and finally the third-party segment. But the third-party segment has the highest observed lift. So what are you going to do with this information? Should you shift budget towards all three? Should you shift budget towards the tactic that is the highest observed lift and is stat sig? Or towards the tactic that's stat sig at the highest threshold, but has a lower observed lift? You really do not know what to do with this information. And again, when you take this to a statistician, what they will tell you is you shouldn't be looking at these statistical significance indicators in the middle of a study. You should look at them one time at the end of a study when you've reached a certain sample size. But that's not how stat sig indicators have been used historically by research firms who have abused them with mid-campaign reads that create all the struggles that brand marketers have around mid-campaign reporting and optimization. So it's in response to this that Upwave's data science team designed and released early this year a new set of metrics to complement statistical significance. So Upwave's dashboard reports lift metrics with stat sig indicators for post-campaign wrap-ups. And then for mid-campaign reporting and optimization, it reports optimization metrics, specifically a metric that Upwave calls the outperformance indicator. This is an industry first. It is only available from Upwave. It's updated daily, and it provides actionable insights that you can report on and optimize towards with confidence. No more waiting till the end of the campaign. This outperformance indicator is different from statistical significance. Like, it's complementary to statistical significance. Specifically, the outperformance indicator reveals the relative performance between tactics so that marketers can optimize campaigns mid-flight. Right, so let's dive into the details of what the difference is between two metrics, and then we're going to go back to that example that we talked about earlier. Statistical significance shows the probability that a tactic is driving non-zero lift. The more technically accurate definition of statistical significance is even a little more complex. It's the probability that the observed lift would have been observed if there was actually no lift at all. But for simplicity, this definition is more common. It's the probability that a tactic is driving non-zero lift. That is different than the outperformance indicator from Upwave, which tells you that the probability that a tactic is pulling the campaign average up. That is the probability that a tactic is helping the campaign. Now, when you're doing mid-campaign optimizations, which question are you asking yourself? Are you asking, well, which tactics are driving any lift at all? I don't care how much. It could be 0.1% or 10%. I don't care. No, that's not the question you're asking when you're optimizing. The question you're asking when you're optimizing a campaign is the second question. Is this helping the campaign? What's the probability that this tactic is helping, is pulling the campaign average up? What's great is this second metric, the outperformance indicator, it stabilizes much more quickly than statistical significance. So you can report on it with confidence, and you can act on it. It answers the question that you're asking mid-campaign. Statistical significance, on the other hand, answers a different, also important question, but a different question. One that's relevant at the end of campaign, when you're thinking for planning purposes, should I use this tactic, this audience, this media partner, again, in another campaign? Well, to make that decision, you want to know that that media tactic is driving some lift, that it actually is making a connection with your reached audience, and that you are able to drive lift and brand outcomes using that tactic. Now, that's a different question. That's a planning question. So as such, it's only relevant post-campaign, but also for statistical reasons. Statisticians will tell you that stat sig, based on the underlying p-values, should only be evaluated one time, again, at the end of a campaign. So for statistical reasons and for reasons of the when this question is relevant, statistical significance should be used once, and that's post-campaign. And that's how Upwave advertises statistical significance. Mid-campaign, Upwave advertisers and media companies are using the outperformance indicator for mid-campaign reporting and optimization. All right, so let's go back to this example we discussed earlier, where we don't know what we can tell the client about this situation, and we don't know what optimizations we can take with any type of confidence. Now let's look at the exact same underlying data set, but using Upwave's outperformance indicator. So we see that the millennial audience has an 80% chance of helping the campaign, of pulling the campaign average up in awareness lift. By contrast, the home PMP only has the 10% chance of pulling the campaign average up. And the first party and third party audiences that we saw earlier were stat sig, and the third party audience even had the highest observed lift. In reality, it's pretty close to a coin flip, whether those are helping the campaign or not. And so what's great is that the optimization decision to make here is now obvious. Whereas here, it is far from obvious what the optimization decision to make is. That's the beauty of outperformance indicators, and in general, the beauty of designing metrics to answer the questions that are being answered, um, are being asked when those metrics are used. So how are Upwave users using the outperformance indicator? They're using it to shift budget to higher performing tactics. They're using it to modify DSP bid factors early and often, sometimes manually. Sometimes they're even using it to automate DSP bid factors completely. So rather than manually, you can actually set a base bid and then use these outperformance indicators to automatically adjust that base bid using bid factors. It's used to negotiate with media partners. So in brand campaigns, sometimes there's flexibility, but sometimes there's less flexibility with direct buy media partners. But using this information as part of the communication with media partners often results in improved inventory from underperforming media partners. Here's a really exciting area where Upwave advertisers use these optimization metrics. That's in the ad server. You can actually use these outperformance indicators to set creative rotation weights directly. And then you can just go back every couple of days, every week, and update those weights to reflect the optimization metrics that you see in your Upwave dashboard. And finally, media companies are using this to optimize their own inventory. The main demand for this came from brands and agencies that were struggling with mid-campaign reporting and optimization. And so honestly, we weren't sure whether media companies using Upwave would use these metrics, but we've been really excited to see that actually they're using it just as much as brands and agencies are. So we've talked about optimization a little more than reporting. I want to dive deep into reporting now, because you may be thinking, well, we still need to report stat sig. That's what our stakeholders, internal and external, expect. How can we get out of this? Well, let me show you how Upwave advertisers are increasingly modifying the way that they provide status updates mid-campaign to their clients. With these optimization metrics, they now have numbers, insights that they can report with confidence that don't go beyond what they can state with confidence mid-campaign. So the basic template of a status update now looks like this. We are seeing these particular tactics outperform the campaign. So in the example earlier, the millennial tactic, we are seeing the millennial targeting tactic outperform the campaign and have shifted budget accordingly. We're monitoring this daily for changes. And at the end of the campaign, we'll have a precise read on the exact amount of lift driven by the millennial tactic and the other tactics. So here, what's great is that you are reporting what you know mid-campaign with confidence. You're reporting valuable insights that stabilize quickly, that aren't going to change on you post-campaign. In fact, if you want to know the likelihood that they're going to change, that outperformance indicator tells you exactly. So going back to our earlier example, what this 80.2% means is by the end of the campaign, there's a 19.8% probability that millennial will underperform the campaign. So this answers your question exactly of how probable is it that by the end of the campaign, this will have reversed. This story will have reversed. Conversely, there's only a 10% probability that this PMP tactic will actually outperform the campaign. All right, so Upwave's outperformance metrics make mid-campaign reporting a breeze now, because they give you as much information as you know with confidence and no more. Email notifications using the Upwave dashboard also make optimization essential. oftentimes advertisers have dozens of different tactics that they're monitoring, and Upwave scours all of these tactics looking for wide variation in these optimization metrics, like in the example we saw, and immediately emails you when there are optimization opportunities for a particular tactic. So takeaways: the Upwave Outperformance Indicator can be evaluated and acted on continuously throughout a campaign with confidence. It reveals the relative performance between tactics, which is what matters during a campaign, rather than the isolated performance of individual tactics against the absence of those tactics at all. So whether there's any non-zero lift from a tactic. And this new metric stabilizes quickly, so you're not left trying to explain why data in an earlier report changed significantly later on. So that's today's presentation. I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, I encourage you to enter them into the Q&A. We already have a couple. But while I'm answering the first couple questions that have come in, if you have any other questions that you think of, submit them in the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to all of them. So the first question in the Q&A is, do customers understand the difference between these two metrics? So this is a common concern amongst agencies in particular, is will I be able to explain this new metric to my customers? What we have found is that customers definitely, in clients, brand marketers definitely do understand this new metric. And in fact, that's what's so great about it. Because again, let me just go back to what statistical significance tells you. What it tells you is the probability that a tactic would have driven the amount of observed lift that we're observing if there was no lift at all. Now, that confuses the heck out of people, using all these double negatives. And when you ask any brand marketer, is that the question that you're asking? They're all going to say, no, that's not the question I'm asking. I just want to know if this is helping the campaign. Was this a good use of money? Did this particular tactic, did this help the campaign? And that's the question that's being asked mid-campaign. And so when you explain this new optimization metric actually answers this question: what's the probability that this tactic is pulling up the campaign average? Then there is, it's much easier to understand. So we've actually found that this is one of the huge benefits, because it's answering the business question that brand marketers are asking mid-campaign. Do these optimization metrics require a mid-campaign read? So Upwave is different from research companies in that research companies offer mid-campaign, you pay them some amount of money, like $10,000, to get a mid-campaign read that you then wait for. With Upwave has no concept of a mid-campaign read that you pay for. It's all automated. Upwave has nightly fully automated reads in the Upwave dashboard. So there's no extra read that you pay for over and above this. So these optimization metrics are fully updated across all tactics every single night. What do I say when customers ask if these optimization metrics are stat-sig? So we have had some agency clients that have been asked this and by stakeholders. And what this reflects is the hold on the kind of the imagination of this concept of stat-sig, that people aren't really sure exactly what it means, but it seems to reflect some level of confidence. And the reality is that that's actually not what it tells you. It's not some sort of magic index of confidence that you can attach to any number. And so the best way to answer this question, which is, an understandable question and that we get a lot, is just to back up and explain the difference between stat-sig and these new optimization metrics. And that stat-sig answers the question, is there any lift at all? Is a campaign, is a tactic driving any lift at all? It is not comparing tactics to each other. And it's not telling you whether a tactic is helping the campaign in the sense of pulling up the campaign average. For that question, does this tactic help the campaign compared to all the other tactics that are in the campaign? That's the question that's answered by optimization. And so you really can't talk about optimization metrics from Upwave being stat-sig or not stat-sig. It's more, they're independent metrics with their each independent use cases. And Upwave advertisers are using optimization metrics from Upwave because they want to optimize and report to clients mid-campaign. And then they're using stat-sig at the end of the campaign for planning purposes to plan the following campaign. All right, that is the questions that we've received. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me at ken@upwave.com, or if you are an Upwave customer, reach out to your CSM. Thank you for your time today, and look forward to speaking with you at the next Upwave Expert Update.